My name is Glen J. Darby. I was in the Navy from May of 1943 till the war ended, and I got out on the 22nd day of February, I believe it was, in 1946. Told my father that I asked permission to get into the Navy, and he told me he'd rather I not go, but next time he heard from me, I wrote him a letter and told him I was at Bainbridge Naval Air Training Station, and I was enjoying myself, and I hoped that he was not going to hold that against me. There I went to gunnery school at Little Creek, Virginia, and I think I got to fire the guns about 5 or 6 times, and the next thing I knew, I was on a ship headed for Iran. And I was in Iran on Christmas Day, 1943, a great place, great ship, great people on it. And of course, as I told you before, I had chronic seasickness, and I never enjoyed myself too much when I was in port because I was studying, trying to become a third-class gunner's mate, because they did not have to send submarine lookout. They was in charge of the crews. And believe it or not, within 8 months, I was a gunner's mate third class. I went to sea in the North Atlantic for about 13 months, back and forth to England, Newcastle, England. In fact, I was in Newcastle, England the day that we attacked Germany across the canal. When I got back to the States, they decided they was going to send me to the Pacific because the war was turning down over there by that time in Europe. I caught another Liberty ship, which was a troop transport, and I served in the Pacific all over it until the war ended. They dropped the first atomic bomb on Japan on my 20th birthday, August the 6th, 1945. I never did believe that one bomb was going to end the war. But now that I've thought about the life and everything else that went with it, I was so happy that Harry Truman was president at that time, because I felt like with President Roosevelt, I don't know that he would have, I feel like that he would have never dropped that bomb. And the history has said that if we had had to attack Japan, they would have been more than between 5 and 10 million people killed. So in my opinion, I've always said this since then, the cruelest war you can fight is probably the quickest war to win and the less people that'll get killed. I've never been afraid of a man that hollered at me and told me what all he was going to do to me. I've always been afraid of a man that beat the hell out of me and then told me why he did it. I was picking tomatoes in Ruskin, Florida. 14 or 15 years old. And I thought, as small as Japan is, we can go over and whip in a week. You know, they ain't got nothing over there much. And I knew that much in school. But it wasn't that way, was it? It was a rough way, and we didn't fight that war like we are this one. Over there, when a guy was doing something to you, you could shoot him. Here, if you shoot the wrong person, you were in trouble. So you cannot win a war by trying to love somebody to death. You got to show them you mean business, and in my opinion, is always the way that was always done. You did the job to support the mission. There was a time that I was extremely scared. It was in Cape Hatteras, Soviet North Carolina. I was trying to get home for Christmas, 44, I guess it was, yeah, 44. We got caught in a storm over there, and we fought that storm for better than a week, trying to keep that ship off of those rocks over in Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Now, I was scared. We lost all of our lifeboats off because that's how strong the storm was. And you know, when the man upstairs is the one that's doing that, there ain't nothing you can do about it. But now if it'd been another guy, one of my enemies, I could have fought back and I would have had a better chance. But all I could do was go out there and do whatever I had to keep that ship off of those rocks. When we would be shot at in airplanes overhead, that wasn't nothing there. I could do something about that guy up there, but I couldn't do nothing about this guy in Cape Hatteras. One of the strangest places I guess I ever landed on a ship was Portugal. That was a neutral country. You pulled in there and there was a Japanese flags all over the place, German flags and American flags. But you had to be, if they come aboard our ship and put up a sign there that said, if you want to come ashore, you're welcome. You wear civilian clothes or dungarees and a t-shirt. Don't start no troubles with these other people. If you do, you'd be better off to stay here, because if you do that, you're going to have some knots on your head and you're going to be in jail. Yeah, and down off of the Peleliu Island, we was on a transport, had a Marine Air Wing on the ship. And we always got up every morning about daylight and stood gun watch, because that's when the submarines would attack. So we was going to the gun crew one morning, and that ship just started doing like this in the water. It was just shaking all over the place. We thought it had been hit by a torpedo. What had happened, the propeller off of the ship had twisted off, and that engine was running like it was pulling that ship, but it didn't have a propeller on it. That propeller was about a 2-ton item, and it twisted it off. And there we was floating around over there without a way to move. Now that was a kind of frightening situation, because in that area over there, when we were fighting that war over there, sometimes we would not attack every island. We would bypass the little ones. But the little ones was passing information back to what was happening, and that's what we were afraid of. Another thing, I was at a situation over there where an ammunition ship blew up, and that was kind of scary too. It killed about 400 and something, 300 and something people, I think, and sank about 5 ships. And it was one of our own ammunition ships. But and I have the copy of the thing here somewhere, that in one of these things that shows what our mission was. We were Guadalcanal, we was in New Guinea, we was in the Philippine Islands, we was at, you name it, Peleliu Island. We were all over that place down there on that ship, because we just going everywhere you needed to go. Think about when I was going back and forth across the North Atlantic. Old Axis Sally was singing the song, when we'll be sinking Kaiser's coffins. Kaiser was the one that made the Liberty ships, and they was referring to that. Axis Sally was a lady that advertised, that tried to keep the troops scared. And of course, after I was in there, down in the Navy and down around Manila, they had Tokyo Rose. I don't know if you remember that or not. She was coming up with the same stuff. In most cases, telling you about your family back home and what they were doing and blah, blah, blah. And trying to lead everybody to believe that their wife was shacking up with somebody else, or, what have you. But all that was, it's trying to do harm to you. The biggest, hardest thing is leaving. Then after you leave, your mind is on your mission. It can't be on your family. If you do, you're going to be in trouble. The mission is the only thing that counted, and that was the only way that I was recognized for. When the mission needed to be done, I did it. It may not have been as good as they'd like for it, but it worked. When I come home from the Navy, I met my wife in front of the Strand Theater, downtown Marietta, and she was with a sailor that I knew. And I says, "Where you guys going?" Says, "We're going to the theater over at Bell Theater." I says, "How y'all going?" Says, "We're going by bus." I said, "Oh, I got a car here. I'll take y'all over there." And Next night I had a date with my wife, and 4 months later we were married. From World War II, I come home really to nothing. When I come home, I went to work I worked at about 4 or 5 different places before I finally ended up with the fire department. I sat there one day and they said they was hiring a policeman in Marietta. And I went up there and I seen they wasn't hiring policemen and firemen. I said, I think I'll apply for the fireman. And I did, and Howard Schaefer gave me the job, and I enjoyed working there, but I seen pretty quick that I was, at that day, the number of firemen in this whole city of Marietta was 18. I guess the happiest moment that I had is when I heard that the war was ending. Because I wanted to come home and do something else. In fact, if you'd have told me then that I was going to go back to the Air Force when the Korean War broke out and stay in until I retired, I'd say, you're crazy. But I did, and I wouldn't take nothing for it. It made me respect everybody that more so, because I was a kind of somebody that I had all these little jobs and things like that. And when I went in the Air Force and proved to them in the Navy and proved to them that I wanted to be a gunner's mate, I wanted to be promoted, and I made it quicker than most people because that's what I did. I put my whole life into my job that I was doing in the Navy. And I wouldn't take nothing for it. I think the problem with the world we live in today, and I'm sincere as I can be about this, if we fail to have to defend this country, we've lost everything. What else have you got if we can't defend this country? And to me, I couldn't do anything, but if it come to it, I'd try. I'd try.